Navigate the gauntlet of uncertainty the world throws at your business with SAP. Whether it's a tropical storm hitting your warehouse or a short supply of those little plastic twist ties, SAP can help you tackle those unexpected crushing setbacks with its AI-powered capabilities. To pivot to new suppliers, automate paperwork, and source the twist ties you need at the price you want, so your business can stay unstoppable. Learn more at sap.com/uncertainty.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contracts. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
After 87 days away, Parliament resumed this past week. It was the first time that Pierre Poilievre, the newly minted MP for Battle River Crowfoot, had faced off against Prime Minister Mark Carney in the House of Commons. Hello and welcome to the Full Comment Podcast. My name's Brian Lilly, your host, and this week, a treat for you, the return of the political panel that entertained you so much during the federal election. From the National Post, Stuart Thompson and Tasha Kiridan. Thanks so much for joining me, guys, and good to have you back.
Great to be here.
Hey, Brian.
Let's play a bit of a couple of clips off the top. I thought that Pierre Poilievre had a bit of humor in him when he showed up and said he apologized essentially for being late.
My mother taught me never to be late, so please forgive me for my late arrival to the session. I had some meetings with extremely important people in East Central Alberta, Mr. Speaker, after which I was honored to be elected by the great people of Battle River Crowfoot.
And on that same note, Mark Carney having a bit of a laugh and a joke when he mistakenly called Pierre Poilievre a minister and invited him over to his side of the aisle.
Mr. Speaker, I understand the minister, or the minister, promotion. Come on over.
So my question to you after the first week, how do you grade it? You know, I think Carney and Poilievre both hit a new tone. It's a nicer tone than we saw back when it was Poilievre versus Trudeau. I think the opposition's asking serious questions. Carney's giving serious answers. I'm not sure his ministers always are. What are your thoughts after a week of watching the House back?
I'll kick it off. I agree with you. The tone is less aggressive, less hostile. I think the Conservatives are saving their fire for some real moments, such as, the budget obviously coming up, but I think also the continued negotiations or lack thereof with the United States. Now they're going to be hearings into the tariffs on both sides, or into CUSMA rather, on both sides of the border. How's that going to go? So I think that the sense I get is that they want to be seen as more serious. With Trudeau, it was easy. They just attacked him. They attacked everything he stood for and everything he did. But Carney's a different animal. And I think Poilievre wants to look more like a prime minister in waiting, so he's trying to be more substantive.
So, Stuart, on that note, I found it interesting that they started off as saying that in question period, they're going to hold Mark Carney to account using his own words. And they kept quoting him and saying either you didn't deliver or you didn't deliver enough or you're not meeting your promise, things like that. It's kind of a way to hold the government account that, to Tasha's point, isn't super aggressive, combative.
Yeah. And actually, it's, I think, taking advantage of a big weakness or maybe just something in their favor as the opposition, which is that Mark Carney has made a lot of big promises. He's also made promises that have extremely long timelines. So we're not going to see things on the ground. We're not going to see tangible results on major projects or on housing or anything like that anytime soon. So what that means is in the interim, the Conservatives can just keep hammering away at Carney about that. And I think that is really their tone right now, which is we will support the government when we agree, and we will oppose them when they're not doing well enough on the things we agree with. So that is a change. In December of last year, the Conservatives told me there was no Team Canada and they were going to oppose Trudeau, even on the Trump stuff. And I think the tenor has changed, and I think that's just strategic from the Conservatives.
Okay, so on this issue of is he delivering, one of the things that you're supposed to do in politics is undersell and over-deliver. That's a recipe for success. And so far, in my view, the serious knock against Carney, and look, I get people are still giving him benefit of the doubt and all of that, but he has oversold and is so far under-delivering. That major projects list they're all good projects, but they were all going ahead regardless. And when he said, throughout the campaign and on election night, we need to think big, act bigger, and move at speeds we've never seen before. I was like, yeah, go for it. And then that list came out, and I was like, well, the copper mine's almost done. Darlington's going ahead anyway. The Port of Montreal is being expanded. This was not the list that I was expecting, and I want them to go faster. I want them to do more. Well, you're shaking your head, Tasha.
Yeah, I think actually what he's done is he hasn't given, for a lot of these things, actual benchmarks. There's no dates. There's no schedule. There's no how many jobs will this create.
Grey Cup, Stanley Cup, World Cup. He's using all the sports dates.
Well, yeah, he loves sports metaphors are his thing. I get a little fatigued with the hockey stuff personally, but the point is that he's not tied himself to specific metrics that the Conservatives can come back and say, you said that there would be, this many houses built by this time, and they're not. He said, we're going to have 4,000 houses. The shovels are going in the ground basically next year. Well, this means that by the time the election rolls around, I don't know if those houses are going to be built. But the point is that I don't think people are going to be measuring specifics. They're not going to be looking at the Port of Montreal and going, or the port in Quebec, it's actually not in Montreal, but going, oh, wow, look how great that is. Carney built that. Or the LNG terminal at the other end going, oh, yeah, look, it's great. Isn't that Carney built that? People are going to care about what's in their pocket. They're going to care whether they can afford a home. They can afford whether their kids are, able to move out of the basement. They're going to care about the groceries price. They're going to care about very basic things. Those are the things they will care about. Those are the metrics Carney has to worry about. Unemployment, inflation, interest rate, that stuff.
If I can stay with you for a second and then get Stuart on that measure, the Conservatives on Monday, before the new inflation numbers came out, before the Food Banks Canada report came out, they were saying, Mark Carney said, judge me by your experience at the grocery store. And they kept using that line in several questions. And then they brought it back Tuesday. I was like, where's that line from? And I said, I can't find this line. Where are you guys finding this quote? I only find you guys quoting it. So they sent me the video of Mark Carney saying, a reporter on May 13th at the swearing in at Rideau Hall, they said, how should you be held accountable? And he said, well, judge me by the experience at the grocery store. And then, of course, food inflation is still up. And part of it is the tariffs that we put on things like coffee. So, I mean, there are potentials for, this strategy of the Conservatives using his own words against them working. And I think that's an example. He hasn't
repeated that line ever since. I haven't heard it anywhere for that exact reason. I think so much hinges on what happens with the U.S. All these things, our steel industry, the price of the food, like you said, anything that's brought into this country and it's tariffed. Also just, issues of trade with China, canola, seafood. Like there's all these big picture issues that are affecting our economy that Carney's trying to juggle and manage. And who knows if he will succeed. He sold himself as the manager. That was his job. He was going to manage Trump. He was going to get the results. That people will hold him to because that is a concrete thing. Do we have a trade deal? Do we still have tariffs? You can measure that. But the rest of it, again, it's, all those projects and stuff, I don't think that's going to be the metric. The metric is going to be the very basic things that touch people's lives directly.
Your view on the groceries comment and how the Conservatives and the Liberal government have been doing in question period, because I know you watch it closely, Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, I was there on Monday, deeply disappointed at how tame and collegial it was. I was really hoping for some blood. But yeah, I think this is such an interesting part of Mark Carney because I think we're still in the honeymoon right now where it's not being evaluated in the way that it might be in the future. Same with Trudeau. We all knew that Trudeau was a little bit silly in 2014. But by the time it was 2020, I think we had a different impression of his silliness. Like we were less willing to forgive it. With Carney, there is a little bit of sort of casual arrogance. And he's one of those guys who's... yeah. You have to look really close to see it. But he's one of those guys.
I don't
look
see
inside yourself, Rosemary. I will never forget that line when he took Rosemary Barton.
I see it at certain points, but I don't see it in his performance in the House. I see a guy who's having more fun than I ever thought he would. I thought he would dread question period because, quite frankly, it's dreadful.
I agree with that.
I'm not picking up the arrogance. I'm picking up a very light guy.
So there is a line here. I think Carney's sense of humor, this is what happened to Trudeau, is his sense of humor became less enjoyable to Canadians. And yesterday, Carney made a joke picking up on something Pierre Poilievre said. Poilievre said, well, I know you're such a great fiscal expert. Shouldn't you be able to tell us the deficit? And Carney said, well, I am a great economist and I am a fiscal expert. And he was clearly joking, but he wasn't fully joking. Like, I think Carney actually does think of himself that way. And we see this as reporters every now and then. There's a little kind of flair of condescension or arrogance.
Yeah, I see it more with speaking to journalists, in particular female journalists. But I see it there more than the House. And that could be something that bites him in the butt.
I think we're still seeing it through the lens of the honeymoon right now, where we're sort of like giving them the benefit of the doubt on those comments, whereas 2 years from now, they may take on a different light. Or if the economic situation gets worse and we're hearing this kind of stuff, we just are less willing to laugh along with Carney. So I agree with you. Especially in the first couple of days of Carney being in the House earlier in the spring, I was really surprised by how well he took to it, especially because, for example, Tim Hodgson, who was also new at it, looked terrified when he got up to talk. And
I think
Carney,
Tim Hodgson still looks terrified in the House.
Well, it is hard. It's a hard thing to do, and Carney took to it right away, which surprised me.
I'll ask you about this then. I appreciated that the excessively combative tone from both sides was not there between the leaders. And then I think it was Tuesday, Carney was gone. And then it was Wednesday, he wasn't answering as many questions. Guys like Champagne, Frankie Bubbles, getting super aggressive and dismissive in their responses. And I was like, ooh, this is the ugly side I didn't want back from, last year.
The nature of the House is that the more time you're in there, the more irritable and partisan you get. And we notice this on the sort of month-to-month scale, where if there's a 3-month sitting, they're pretty raw by the end of it, and nobody gets along, and the heckles get more vicious, and that's, I think, just human nature. But the people who've been there for 10 years, looking at basically the same people and hearing the same insults back and forth, I think that they are in that same spot where they're sort of done with this. And you can see it on the Conservative side too. Steve McKinnon got up on Monday, a longtime Liberal, and he was surprisingly partisan, I thought, in his press conference with reporters, sort of kicking off the House sitting. So I think that's right. Carney's new. He doesn't have this sort of built up irritability or sort of partisan angst. And it is refreshing when you see Carney, and it is jarring when you see someone like Champagne. So it's something that will be noticeable.
Well, it also is a bit of a good cop, bad cop routine. I think that Carney doesn't want, like you said, we discussed earlier, is this, he has this sort of dry wit. He can slip into condescension sometimes, but he is so much more pleasant to listen to than Trudeau. Like, I cannot, he's got intellect. He knows what he's talking about. He will make comments and humor that doesn't, drive me up the wall usually. So it's a nice change. The rest of them, though, like you said, they've been there, right? But they also have a function. And the Prime Minister, if he wants to be above the fray, knowing that the other side's going to punch at some level, he needs some, I won't hockey metaphor here, but he needs some big goons on the ice too, right? So there we go. I made it hockey pun. Proud of myself. But that's the enforcers, and he has to have some. And if Champagne wants to do that, it's he's a smooth guy. It's a bit surprising. I agree, a bit surprising he was that hostile this week. But I think he's also also going to be wearing a lot of big files, right? And sort of steeling himself maybe for a lot of the stuff that's going to come his way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, lots of questions about the budget. Before we move on to all the people that left, as one person said it to me, it's not rats leaving a sinking ship, it's rats leaving before the ship gets afloat. Before we get to that, let me ask you about quick thoughts on Poilievre, because we kind of brushed by him. How's this rookie MP from Alberta doing in his first week back? Tasha, go ahead.
Cute how he started off saying, I'm late, and and he's trying to be more pleasant. I thought, like I said, I thought he was more serious. He seems to be adopting more of a gravitas, serious kind of tone, because he doesn't have the same punching bag either. The routine he did with Trudeau wouldn't work on Carney, and he knows that. And if he's going to position himself as, I am not just the opposer, but the proposer, which is something Scheer said that the party would do too, then he can't comport himself in that way. So I think he did okay. I think we're waiting to see if the other Poilievre comes back, because maybe he can only be so nice for so long. But generally, the tone was more civil, let's just say, and I think that's a good thing. We'd like to turn the temperature down, and it's the leaders who do set the example, and maybe not everyone follows it, but at least they are setting an example this week.
Stuart?
Yeah, I agree with all that. It was less exciting for journalists, but probably better for Pierre Poilievre politically. And I know that he has to actually, his muscle memory is to be combative in the House. It's where he likes to be. It's what he likes to do. He thinks that's how you hold a government to account, is you ask them really strong prosecutorial questions. And it is, you can still do that, I think. And I think that it wasn't like he was pulling punches, but it is just the tenor of the questions, and it's how you comport yourself. And I think that's something that Poilievre is getting better at, and it was on display this week. But who knows? I know his muscle memory is to be strong, so he might go back to it.
I mean, the difference, as someone put it to me about a year ago, is that by the time Justin Trudeau was done, the public was done with Justin Trudeau, and you could not punch him hard enough to make Canadians satisfied. It's not like that with Carney. But he oddly is having a bunch of people leave, and I'm not shocked by Chrystia Freeland, in part because I guess it was 2023, the first time I heard that she was looking for a diplomatic appointment and trying to leave. I was surprised she ran in the last election because of that. So I'm not shocked that she's leaving, cabinet anyway. She's not leaving as an MP until the next election, but she'll be Canada's special envoy on the rebuilding of Ukraine. But Bill Blair, Jonathan Wilkinson, David Lametti, potentially Stephen Guilbeault, we're hearing. Does this surprise all of you guys?
Yes and no. I mean, Chrystia Freeland, I wasn't surprised at all, because her career is like, she's gone as far as she can in this world, right? She was demoted. She didn't win the leadership. So if she wants another kick at the can, she may well. She figures, okay, I'll go and cool my heels in Ukraine for a bit, and then maybe come back in someday when Carney is no longer there, or on his way out. The rest of them, I think it was a question of also feeling that they didn't have the space here. Blair, definitely not. Guilbeault, definitely not. Also moved out of his favorite space. He's no longer environment minister. That was his. I mean, this is a guy who, jumped off the CN Tower to protest Greenpeace stuff, like in his earlier youth. That's his thing, and he's stuck now in heritage. That's not very exciting. And as for Lametti, that was a bit surprising. I thought he would be around longer. I thought that this was something that, that was a role he was moving into, that would be the Eminence Grise advisor, that sort of behind the scenes. But maybe he doesn't want to be behind the scenes. Maybe that's not his thing. So I think there's a variety of reasons that people are either leaving or thinking of leaving in this thing. And I think it's a lot to do with their personal ambitions and what they feel they want to do right now.
So on Lametti, I was speaking to a plugged-in Liberal in Ottawa who said that the fighting between... So Lametti's leaving, according to the reporting. Shout out to Bob Fife in the Globe and Mail. I'm going to, criticize Bob Fife in the Globe and Mail in a minute. They got good reporting on why Lametti's leaving, and talking about the infighting with Tom Pitfield, who they had two principal secretaries. On no planet is that ever going to work. It's a ridiculous idea. And so they were constantly battling for the right to be top dog. Apparently, this goes back to the election campaign, is what this Liberal was telling me just after the story broke. But I did a post where the headline was Tom Pitfield smokes David Lametti. And the reason I put it in those terms is that, do you guys remember about 2-3 weeks ago, the Globe had another story, and it was a really weak, crappy one that said Tom Pitfield's his company he used to work at before he went into government, Data Sciences, had Philip Morris, the tobacco company, as a client. And they tried to, get Carney to say, oh, that should disqualify him for being in government. It's clear now that David Lametti planted that story to try and get Tom Pitfield out. And now Pitfield's still there and Lametti's out. That's my view on it, Stuart. I don't know if you rolled your eyes when you saw that tobacco story a few weeks ago.
This is my favorite thing about this world is I do remember 3 weeks ago going, why would we care about connections to big tobacco? Like what year is this? Yeah. So it was an odd one. And that is a weird thing because Pitfield was originally supposed to be interim principal secretary, and then Lametti was supposed to come in, and then you can only imagine what was happening in the meantime with the fighting going on there. So I think this is pretty the Freeland one and some of the other ministerial ones that may happen in the future, pretty normal stuff. You have people who maybe aren't as on board with the new era as others, and then you have people who
Wilkinson and Guilbeault.
Yeah, and then you have people like Freeland who, basically you've hit your ceiling and there's not a lot of use in just sort of hanging around. The interesting thing is that we had been hearing that Freeland was angling for the UN ambassador job once Bob Rae gives that up, and that is the job that Lametti seems to be going to. So it is that just shows you who really has Mark Carney's heart in this world.
Well, they've been buddies since Harvard. And then Oxford. Yeah. So I want to read to you part of my column on all of these changes. Just the part about Bill Blair going to replace Ralph Goodale as Canada's High Commissioner in London. Ralph Goodale, he's an easy to get along with guy. So I wrote, whatever one thinks of Ralph Goodale, no one can ever say the former cabinet minister wasn't jovial, that he had the gift of the gab and could ensure people who might be hostile would eventually warm up to him. Goodale was a liberal but a happy warrior. He was well suited for the role of diplomat. Blair, by contrast, is a gruff, grumpy, do-it-my-way old police officer who's unlikely to succeed in one of Canada's top diplomatic posts. You don't win friends and influence people by barking orders at them, and Blair has the bedside manner of a drill sergeant with a bad temper. That's who we're going to make our High Commissioner. Ralph Goodale always made sense to me.
Yeah.
Bill Blair, he's grumpy.
That's a very good point. I mean, the Brits are not, they can be grumpy too, but they don't like someone from the colonies being grumpy at them. Probably, they want to be the ones. If anyone's gonna be grumpy in the room, it's gonna be them, not us Canadians here. So I think you're right. I think that is not the best fit. Was it a question of, figuring out just the chess pieces and where they could go and what's available and how do you get people out? Maybe. But I think of John Baird in the UK, right? I think of smiles and joviality. I think to your point, Goodale, smiley, jovial. It's a totally different look. And I think definitely a better fit for a diplomatic post, which is what this is.
Yeah, it's... Oh, by the way, quick fun story. After I posted that column, I heard from a senior Harper person who said, you should have seen, they described Blair in less than favorable terms and then said, you should have seen how much he begged us to let him run for them before the Liberals took him in 2015. And they just looked at him and said, no, we don't think you're a good fit. So it's why in my column I had actually consciously not said, I said Goodale was a Liberal. I never said Blair was. He was just someone looking for a place to perch. Since we're talking about ambassadors, apparently the Canadian and American negotiating teams, this is something out of your shop, Stuart, they haven't been talking about a trade deal in quite a while. the American ambassador to Canada the other day, Pete Hoekstra, was saying, well, we were hoping for a grand bargain. That's clearly not going to happen. We're just going to, move forward on public consultations on renegotiating CUSMA. I've been saying for a while that we've got the wrong ambassador in Washington. Again, smart person. Well, unlike Bill Blair, I'd say Kristen Hillman's a smart person. But she's not the diplomat that you need to move the goalposts. A good trade negotiator, apparently, but we need a diplomat there. Are we taking the U.S. seriously, or what are we doing with the Americans right now? I'm trying to understand the strategy of saying we've got a great relationship and we've got the best deal, when a little while ago it was they want to break us so they can own us. I'm like, what's happening here?
Well, Carney did say recently that he texts all the time with Trump.
Because Trump's a modern man.
Man.
How much would you pay to see that text thread? I would kill to see that.
And on all the capitalizations, like in Trump's Truth Social posts.
Yeah, and I'm sure Mark Carney's, I bet he's got impeccable grammar in his text. I bet he's one of those guys that perfect punctuation, no emojis.
And would confuse Trump with all the British spelling, which apparently he told his staff he's demanding.
Yeah. So there's a couple of theories on this. One is that, there's just nothing to talk about at this point. Like, Carney's turning to Mexico, and maybe they're trying to team up with Mexico to put pressure on the U.S., which, given the relative sizes, I don't think is going to be hugely successful. But I'll give you the contrarian perspective, which I wrote about a couple of weeks ago, and I think is interesting enough to put out there, which is that Tim Sargent, who's an economist at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, wrote this piece, and I chatted to him about it. He made the case that with every week that goes by, the pressure is on Trump, not on Canada, because we're so covered by CUSMA, except on steel and aluminum and some auto parts. But with Trump having all of these tariffs globally, the economics of it are going to start biting soon. And he's got midterms coming in a year. It's going to start to get harder and harder for Trump to push the tariff thing. And he will be more inclined to negotiate with Canada as time goes on. So in pure game theory terms, it might be better for Canada to rag the puck and just wait and see if they can get a better deal out of the US. The other side of that, though, is the politics of it, which is that if Canadians start to look at Carney and go, what are you doing? Like, we're hearing you haven't spoken in weeks. Are you the guy that's going to solve this problem? Or are you the guy who's going to text them and then fly off to Mexico and fly off to the UK and not really actually do anything? So I think there's competing interests here for Carney because the politics of it might get harder. But there is a case to be made that the longer you wait, the better deal you get.
Tasha?
Well, I think there's too many cooks in there too. Kirsten Hillman was the ambassador she's been the ambassador for a long time now, and is, as you said, very capable, very smart. She's not an insider type. That's not what she went there to do initially. But Dominic LeBlanc has taken up a lot of space in this file, and I always got the sense that the reason they didn't replace her, I had heard rumors. I had heard Josh Charest was up for the ambassadorship to the U.S., that they were going to put someone in there with political gravitas, like you said. But
New Year.
With LeBlanc
in the new year.
Happy New Well,
no, seriously, that's the latest, is that in the new year they will.
Okay, well, maybe it's delayed then. I don't know. But I heard this from like right after around the election as the things were. But then LeBlanc came on the scene, and LeBlanc takes up a lot of room. Does he want to have a strong ambassador? Like, if he's the one leading this file, now he's going to be internal trade minister because Chrystia Freeland is skipping off to Ukraine. So he's going to have more responsibilities at home. So maybe it is time to say, okay, we need to have the heavy political, like the smooth person, to your point, the non-Bill Blair in this kind of role. Someone who's got a lot of connections, a lot of weight, knows the players, gets along, works a room, has experience in politics, as Charest would, for example. I'm not sure if that's the strategy here or if it's just accidentally the dominoes are falling this way. But like I said, I always felt that LeBlanc, that he didn't want to necessarily be big-footed by someone, a superstar in that space. But now maybe it's the time to do it because things are not moving. Things are not, there's no success here. Things are not advancing. We're not talking.
I moderated a fireside chat with Danielle Smith a couple of weeks back in Calgary, and she straight up told me, because they have a trade representative in that office as well, as do many other provinces, and she just said that the current team made no inroads and no attempt to meet with or establish relationships with Republicans before Trump won. And she said, that's your job. Like, the whole job is to constantly have relationships with both sides so that when there is a turnover, you are able to call them up. And then after the election, they were calling them up and you didn't want to talk to us before. You wouldn't invite us to things. Now you want to be besties. No. So it's a horrible thing. Let's take a quick break now. We're late for that. And when we come back, we'll talk about Mexico, EV tariffs, and more.
I was deep in it, gaming on Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7. Unfolding the screen made it twice as big and so immersive, I kinda lost myself. Might have trolled a little too close to the sun. Someone in the chat told me to touch grass, so I took my Z Fold 7 outside and kept playing. Still won, got a tan, and a nice little reset. Powerful processor, realistic graphics, you stay locked in, streak stays alive. Can your phone do that?
The new Galaxy Z Fold 7. Get yours at Samsung.com.
Learning through play starts with Lego Duplo. With Lego Duplo, toddlers can develop real-life skills while having fun with colorful bricks made just for them. Large, easy to grip, and safe to explore. When children express themselves with Lego Duplo, they build patience, problem-solving, and empathy. See your child learn perseverance and self-expression with everything they imagine and create. Visit lego.com/preschool to learn more.
At LinkedIn, we know hiring is a big deal for your small business. Sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. LinkedIn uses data that you can't find anywhere else to give you the best candidates, all so you can feel confident you're hiring the best person for the job. And even a little hiring bliss. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
This is Tristan Hopper, the host of Canada Did What?, where we unpack the biggest, weirdest, and wildest political moments in Canadian history you thought you knew and tell you what really happened. Stick around at the end of the episode to hear a sample of one of our favorite episodes. If you don't want to stick around, make sure you subscribe to Canada Did What? Everywhere you get podcasts.
Is the Mexican pivot a good strategy? Last time we were renegotiating NAFTA, we tried playing silly games with Mexico, and it didn't work out too well for us. If you remember, we got frozen out, and then the Americans were signing a deal with Mexico and leaving us on the sideline. One of the things that I've been hearing about trying to get a trade deal with the U.S. is we're using the same playbook as the last time, and we irritated them so much they froze us out last time. Are we just making the same mistakes again, Tasha?
Well, I hope not. I think the idea of, don't let the Americans divide and conquer. Let's make a strategy with Mexico and we're all at the table. We're on the same page is nice in theory, but we have very different interests, and very different bargaining chips vis-a-vis the U.S. I always get the sense with Scheinbaum that she's actually in some way happy that Trump is forcing Mexico or enabling Mexico to deal with its crime problem, its internal gang problem. She has so much social license now to deal with this, because if she doesn't, the U.S. will not play ball with Mexico. Then that's what they hold over their heads. Mexico is huge.
There's several states in the northern part of the country that the government had effectively lost control.
Yes. And people were being killed. Politicians were being killed. The people were disappearing, thousands of people. This was a huge problem. But the hold was so strong. There was no political will. There was no cooperation with police. That people were on the take. Now it's okay. It's Trump's way or the highway, folks. We got to get going. And so that's been what Trump's quid pro quo is. He wants them to clean up their act on fentanyl and crime and organized crime and crime coming across the border. So, okay, she's tackling that. Canada, we've been told, the problem is fentanyl. We keep hearing this. It's fentanyl. It's also things like, we're not pulling our weight to NATO and we are abusing them in trade. But fentanyl's been thrown at us repeatedly over and over and over. So we've done strong borders. We've cracked down. We've had more seizures. We've done things. It's not enough. I'm not sure. Like, we have different issues, because dealing with fentanyl for us is actually dealing with China. And that's the elephant in the room no one's talking about, right? Our fentanyl problem is a Chinese fentanyl problem. It's an infiltration problem. It is a problem
money laundering program.
Yes, exactly. It's at that level, and our banks have already been fined in the U.S. for this. Like, that's what our problem is that we have to deal with. So when Trump says fentanyl, he really means all those things. So it's very different than what the Mexicans have to deal with. It's like theirs is a domestic crime problem. Yeah, China is affecting it too, but it's a domestic crime problem. With us, it is a foreign interference problem. So, can we tackle that? Are we tackling it? No, I think it's getting short shrift compared to a lot of other stuff that is being talked about. But I think that, I don't think that a common strategy, I think it'll fall apart. Like you said, I think we can sign all we want to trade with each other. But at the end of the day, Mexico wants a deal with the U.S. It's more important than a deal with Canada.
By the way, just for next time you're at the grocery store, I interviewed the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois, the other day, and I said, what's this ungraded beef? We were talking about food inflation and how high the price of beef is. And apparently when you see ungraded beef, he says, it doesn't mean it isn't safe. It just comes from Mexico, and it's not very good. So
it's tough. It's very tough
just
beef.
An aside.
Yes, very tough beef.
Stuart, are we making the same mistake before we move on to Chinese EVs?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because as soon as I saw Mexico on the itinerary, I thought I just had a wave of flashbacks to those days in the NAFTA renegotiation. And, we were talking about Chrystia Freeland's legacy, and she will tell you she was instrumental in renegotiating NAFTA with the Trump administration the first time around. Trump will tell you that she was so annoying that she delayed the renegotiation of NAFTA longer than it should have taken. And
Jameson Greer, who is his trade representative now and was Robert Lighthizer number 2, will tell you the same thing.
Yeah. And, this is what you were saying about Canada's diplomatic teams too, which is that, even if you are sympathetic to the sort of anti-Trump, the sort of Trump-resistant resistance forces in the U.S., you still have to do your job as a diplomat and talk to those people and treat them neutrally. But I think, especially in the Trudeau years, there was too much of that, we just can't abide these guys to talk to them normally. And I think Canada has to be really careful with that. I don't think Carney has that in him. I don't think that's his MO, but some of the remnants of this government and some of the remnants of the diplomatic teams probably do. And I think that is our biggest fear right now.
Let me tell you what the diplomatic team is like, whether it's at Fort Pearson in Ottawa or down at the embassy in D.C. They had a cardboard cutout of Trudeau for all the staff to go take selfies with just after Trudeau was elected. They ordered one off Amazon and had it delivered. The issue of Chinese EVs, back in the news, Premier Scott Moe of Saskatchewan went to China along with Mark Carney's parliamentary secretary, Cody Bois. They had meetings in China. Moe came back to Canada, was in Ottawa last week, had meetings with Carney, industry leaders, a bunch of ministers. And the simple answer is lift the EV tariffs that we have placed on Chinese electric vehicles, and they'll, take away the canola tariffs. Even Moe has told me and others it's not that simple. But where's the Canadian public at? Angus Reid poll just out the other day. 57% of Canadians say lower the tariff on Chinese EVs to secure lower tariffs on Canadian canola. 57%. Only 24% say no, stand pat, and 19% aren't sure. That goes a majority in every region of the country and in every party. I think that's the wrong move, because China is an unreliable partner on canola, and every time there is an issue, they're just going to slap tariffs on canola.
It's not about, it's security. It's national security. The government is too stupid to be nakedly telling Canadians that this is about national security and spyware, and that's where this came from. The reason we put tariffs on EVs, and it was to follow the United States. They did it for security reasons after a lot of investigation. So we followed their lead. This is before Trump came in. And
this is under Biden asked us to do it.
This is the reason is because there is a security threat. If you want to have a car it's bad enough we have TikTok. You want to have a car with Chinese software in it that tracks your every movement because it can, because you're driving it around. We want millions of these on the road. would be crazy. It would be absolutely crazy, to be honest. And
these cars, by the way, they've got cameras everywhere.
Well,
sensors
too.
everywhere. They collect data.
That's my point. Computers in it, tracking you, whatever. It knows what you're doing. It knows what you're buying. It knows where you're going. Like, you want to know what Canadians do with their time? Just put a bug in their car. Like, it's like, why would you buy this? Why Canadians shouldn't be buying them? It is a security issue, and the government's not saying that. If you put it in those terms, maybe people wouldn't be answering the way they are. They just look at an economic thing. What the government did do was get rid of the EV mandate, or push it off anyway by a year, and who knows how much more. So there's less pressure. Well, let's need to buy EVs now. So really, would we all be buying them anyway? The uptake for EVs isn't as fast as people thought. But they're not willing to go hardcore and say what this is really about. And until they do, it's their own fault then that this is, sure, that would blow up probably negotiations on canola and seafood. But like you said, the Chinese are not reliable partners on that anyway. And if you're going to be blackmailed into putting spyware into your nation's cars, really, do we want to be playing that game? I don't think so.
Stuart, between 2020 and 2022, China banned all Canadian exports of canola or canola products. Complete ban. 2017, there was a mixture of tariffs and non-tariff barriers on canola. Same in 2013-14. Premier Mo said to me the other day, every 5 or 6 years, they come after us, and they come after canola because it's the biggest crop. Should we be lifting the EV tariffs? I would outright ban them, but I would also not do much trade with China.
Yeah, I am sympathetic to Tasha's argument on this one. And I think the last thing I need is the Chinese government knowing how many times I hit up the Wendy's drive-thru. It's like information I need to keep to myself. But just in general, it's something to be concerned about increasingly. Like when you have adversary countries like that, as Tasha says, TikTok is bad enough. And there is an element of the Danegeld here where as soon as you do something with this kind of blackmail, then that makes people think that you are submissive to it. It's going to work next time. Next time this happens, all we have to do is put some tariffs on the canola. And I think Tasha raised a great point, which is the EV mandate was one of the big issues here. And that there were environmental voices saying we need to remove that tariff on Chinese EVs because we're not going to hit our mandate if we don't get there. And
but I've looked at some of those guys, and they would say that whether there was an EV mandate or not, they just want cheap EVs, and like it could be an armed EV that would shoot at us, and they would be like, "Yeah, but it's electric,"
or just blow you up. There you go.
Yeah. But it does it environmentally friendly. Those are the extreme activists. Are you surprised at how well Scott Moe and Danielle Smith are getting along with Mark Carney? After the major projects list came out and there was no pipeline, I would have thought, based on my conversation just days earlier with Premier Smith, that she would have, had some stern words, not nasty, but stern. And she just said, have patience, guys. Have patience.
Yeah, she did. I think the issue is a private partner, right? Which is why that pipeline hasn't been built at all in the first place. They can't find someone to help them.
You got to fix the regulation to get there.
Yes, but the point is private partners won't come in unless you have someone in the wings. It's not going to be on the list of the first cut of things. It's not even on the second. The second is the Pathways Plus, as they're calling it, of carbon capture and sequestration. So I don't know if she's taking an incremental approach to this or if she knows something we don't know, that maybe there is a private partner that is being courted and she's confident there'll be, by the time the next election rolls around for her or of a referendum on Alberta sovereignty, that project will be on a go and they'll be able to announce it then, because if they announce it then, imagine Alberta Sovereignty Act, and then just before the vote, or not Sovereignty Act, but the referendum, and just before the vote, boom, Ottawa drops, there's going to be a pipeline, guys. Gee, maybe it's better to be part of Canada so you don't have to, there's no borders between you and BC, and who knows, right? It's all politics on that score. That could be part of a strategy. We don't know.
Stuart?
Yeah, well, I'll just say that I did not expect to see Danielle Smith tweeting in all caps about how much she likes Mark Carney. That was like not on my bingo card. I think there was a very read Reuters piece about negotiations about the emissions cap ongoing right now. And it seems like this happened around that time, that there will be some grand bargain on the emissions cap where if Alberta puts in place certain measures, the feds will remove the emissions cap. And, we're talking about a private partner and a pipeline. That's the thing I think that would draw somebody in, is removing that policy. So if I were guessing what made Danielle Smith so giddy that day when she was tweeting in all caps, it's that she had gotten some pretty reliable signs from Carney that policy is on the chopping block. I think the province will have to meet them halfway. I think they'll have to do something, but I think that would solve all those problems and maybe put a pipeline in the future.
As someone that's known Premier Smith a long time and has met her several times since the election, what's fascinating to me is she's saying the same thing in public as she does in private. She's not saying nice things about Mark Carney in public and then saying that SOB is just not doing anything. She's still singing his praises and saying he's good to work with. Give you a comparison of how various premiers have described working with Justin Trudeau compared to Carney. Trudeau would show up late, lecture them for the first 20 minutes, not pay attention if the premiers were talking, not take notes, not ask follow-up questions, and leave early. Mark Carney shows up on time. He listens, he engages, he takes notes, he asks follow-up questions, he looks for ways to work together. That's a world of difference. You're going to be happy if you dealt with the other guy for 10 years.
Is that our baseline now? Just that you act like a normal professional, and that's amazing? That's what Trudeau's brought us to? Okay.
In so many ways, yes, unfortunately.
I mean, I think Carney does raise the bar to where it should have been all the time on that score. I think there might also be some, conservative politics going on too. Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre, not always on the best of terms. So I'm wondering if there's some rivalry there too. It's like Doug Ford. Doug Ford is, buds with Carney, thinks he's great. What ambitions do they have down the line someday? Who knows? What bases are they keeping, stoked? You could speculate all you want, but I don't think it's wrong to think about those things, because people do think about those things and relationships and getting stuff done. Danielle Smith her interest is to get stuff done. So she has to work with Ottawa. She's not in an oppositional frame. She's not going to be the Parti Québécois if they get elected in Quebec and say, hey, you know what? It's our advantage to not get things done because we want to separate. She doesn't want to. So her interest is, let's work together, and then who knows what's in it for Alberta and for me. I'll get reelected. Same thinking of Ford, who people all think has some greater designs eventually, potentially on other levels of politics in Canada.
The man can't stand sleeping out of his bedroom in Etobicoke for more than a night.
Look, but Rideau Cottage is nice, man. I don't know. You don't think he would want to? Prime Minister Ford, think about it. Just think of the optics, folks.
Unless we're moving the Prime Minister's residence to his home in Etobicoke.
It could. Why not? Ford Fest, it would be great, right? Think about it.
Sit in the backyard and smoke with the new Prime Minister for meetings. They also announced a housing plan just before the House of Commons came back. They named Anna Bailau as we'll call her the new housing czar, because I can't remember what her title is. She was dismissed by some as just a failed politician. One, she decided not to run last time. She served several terms. But I also think that that's a bit of a bad knock against her. She's someone who sat on the board of Toronto Community Housing, the largest social housing agency in the country, for close to 10 years. And for the last several years, since leaving elected office, has worked with Dream, one of the country's biggest developers and real estate investment managers. So, she's got the social housing and the private sector experience. I wish we didn't need this thing. I don't want another bureaucracy, but at least he's put someone in charge who has a clue. I'd like your thoughts on that in the context of one of our colleagues describing Carney's plan as Soviet housing. Stuart?
Yeah, make me follow that.
Yep.
So this is the most Trudeau type announcement from Carney that I think we've seen, which is $13 billion, 4,000 homes. Is anybody excited about 44,000 factory-built homes?
It could be 45,000.
It's going to be more than that, because that would put the price tag at $3.25 million per home. So
that's a house in Toronto. Sorry.
Here's what they're promising, and maybe I'll try not to be too cynical about this, but I'll read you what they're saying. Across the country to build 4,000 factory-built homes on federal lands with the possibility of adding up to 45,000 additional units on these sites. There's a lot of words in there that don't ring with certainty. And I think this is just the nature of the housing problem in Canada, which is it's multi-jurisdictional. It's very hard. It also cuts across different demographics too, where some people aren't necessarily excited for lots of new homes in their neighborhood because it's going to add traffic. It's going to be annoying. And I think that on the housing file, the federal mission is to look busy and hope it gets better on its own. Just hope that immigration goes down enough that maybe it's not as big as a problem as it used to be. Hope that rates go down so people are less stressed about that, and make an announcement every now and then where you stand in front of a house. But maybe you'll call me cynical for that.
No, it's a horrible problem to deal with. Go ahead, Tasha.
I wrote about this week, too. I'm going to quote you something else they said that got me. They said that this agency, Build Canada Homes, will fight homelessness by building transitional and supportive housing, build deeply affordable and community housing for low-income households, and also build affordable homes for the Canadian middle class. What is deeply affordable? What does that even mean? This is a boondoggle waiting to happen. This is where Carney is vulnerable. All these projects that are happening are not vulnerable because of the deliverables. They're vulnerable because of corruption, graft, overspending, giving contracts to your friends, all sorts of the stuff that gets politicians stuck, Arrive Can all over it. And the amount of money that's being thrown at it for the results that they are promising, I agree. I mean, it's not that much per home, but it's way more than they would spend if they just went into the market right now, where there are 5,000 condos sitting in Toronto unsold right now of already built stuff. Pre-construction, there's like another thousands of pre-construction that are being built that will come online. You could snap this stuff up and house people tomorrow if that was your goal. If your goal is to house the homeless, if your goal is really to, that's not what's going to happen here. They are going to be giving, contracts and building these parcels of land. We don't even know where they are. Are they where people even want to live? Do we know this? Usually developers choose places people want to live. Otherwise, what's the point? There's no also infrastructure, roadways, sewers, the whole deal. It is mind-boggling that he's doing this, and he's selling it like it's a new thing. No, it's not a new thing. It is subsidized housing, okay? Federally subsidized. That's Soviet, whatever you want to call it. It's not the answer. And interest rates are dropping. House prices are dropping. The government is acting against the market because developers are getting out of the market. Why? Because it doesn't pay. If government's going to give them money over here, they're never going to do it on their own. They'll say, oh, yeah, give me some money or I won't build anything. It is a bad idea.
When I read the press release, the constant mention of affordable made me worried because when most of us are thinking about we want to make homes more affordable, that's different than affordable housing. And, what we want are for all of us to be able to buy a home that we can afford or have our kids be able to enter the market. And housing has become incredibly unaffordable. And my worry is that the bureaucrats do not like the idea of regular people owning homes other than them. And so they really want this deeply affordable housing. They want the social housing. They want the rent geared to income housing. And if that's all they're going to focus on, that is not going to solve the big housing problem in Canada, which is that young people are just looking and saying, I can't even get into the market.
Yeah, I would... If I were in government, I would be extremely worried about this. And this is the thing that's propelling Pierre Poilievre. I was born in 1983, bought my first home in 2019, and that is the last helicopter out of Hanoi in terms of the housing market. And I look at anybody younger than me, anybody who's trying to get in, and I just think, I don't know how you do it at this point. And if people start to get hopeless about this, and then everything else starts to get unaffordable too, then we see the political movement that it's created for Pierre Poilievre. The age demographics in voting have switched. Like we talked about this all through the election campaign. But what we don't want is just fury coming from these people who I think rightly think that things have gotten unfair for them, and the government doesn't seem interested in fixing it. So if you're in government, I think it behooves you to take this seriously.
And what's Tristan Hopper's line? They bought their home for a dozen blueberries in 1954. Something like that.
Cute.
We'll ask last question about bail reform, because Sean Fraser, the man who wanted to spend more time with his family. I did like that line from Chrystia Freeland in her resignation letter or her announcement that she's leaving cabinet, that she's not going to spend more time with her family. Sean Fraser, he of spending more time with his family, now Justice Minister, has no clue about criminal justice. He's not that type of lawyer. He actually stood in the House as the Conservatives were asking serious questions about bail reform, because the current law says that you've got to release people as quickly as possible under the least onerous conditions, and that you have to practice the principle of restraint and when handing out bail. So bail is de facto automatic, except in very rare circumstances. And they're asking him about that because we all see the stories of so-and-so was out on bail, committed heinous crime. 12-year-old out on bail recently in Toronto, along with a 20-year-old also out on bail, killed a homeless man. This is horrific. They're asking serious questions, and Sean Fraser stands up and says, "Oh, the law doesn't say what you think it does." It's like, have you read the law, Sean? It clearly does. I don't have hope for bail reform after hearing the comments from the Justice Minister this week.
Yeah, it is disturbing. There should be a reverse onus. There should be that, to show that bail is not an automatic, like you said, or is not, the judges are not looking for the easiest grounds on which to grant it and the easiest, most lenient terms. It should be the opposite, especially for the certain crimes. And the Conservatives have enumerated those. And I think the Liberals, this is one of their weak spots too. And this was something that the Harper Conservatives did extremely well on in the election in 2005. Sorry, six. Sorry, I'm getting old here. But that was one of when Jane Creba was killed in downtown Toronto, and there had been a wave of other, murders. It was the year of the gun in Toronto, and this poor girl was gunned down in the crossfire of a gang shooting just around Christmas, just during the election. And the Conservatives said no, enough, and they proceeded to put into place a lot of the kind of bills that made sense, but then some of them were not very well drafted. They were not constitution proof. They got overturned in the courts, and then Trudeau undid a pile of others. The Liberals, they are soft on crime. They're not the party of law and order, and the Conservatives can wear that mantle. And I agree, Fraser is like a weak link in this chain. He doesn't come across as somebody who's really that committed to this and understands this. So that and the accountability stuff that we talked about just before with the housing and spending lots of money and wasting it are two things the Liberals have. That is, the Conservatives should go for those jugulars, because people are legitimately frustrated and angry when they see the kind of headlines you were talking about, Brian.
Stuart, your thoughts on the crime aspect? Is that a weak point for the Liberals as we head into this fall session?
Yeah, and I meant last helicopter to Saigon. That's before anybody emails me.
Oh, yeah, it's true. It was out of Saigon.
I did say I was born in 83, so that's why I'm dumb on this.
we could ask Peter Kent about that. He was there, the former MP and cabinet minister.
I was there this summer. I should have picked that up too.
Somebody was writing an email just now. Hopefully they've stopped now. But yeah, I think speaking to Tory strategists, they'll tell you that Mark Carney has eaten their lunch on a lot of things, and it's a concern for Pierre Poilievre. But the two areas where Liberals will just never, for ideological reasons, they'll just never be able to beat the Conservatives on it: crime and immigration, two big issues right now. And that's why you saw Poilievre go hard on the temporary foreign workers program, because he needs to find some space on that issue to speak to his people and people who don't think the government's going far enough. And then on crime, something that's worth noting is that the Liberals didn't win as many seats as they thought they would in the GTA, and they have chalked that up to messaging on crime. The Trump thing faded in the last couple of weeks there, and they just looked soft. And I don't think that they have the ability to not look soft on crime, because they just have competing coalitions. And if you look at a guy like Sean Fraser, he just doesn't have it in his vocabulary.
It's going to be a fascinating fall session. Thank you guys for joining me. Maybe we'll reconvene before the House leaves for the summer, maybe even or for Christmas.
The budget,
and
Brian. Let's reconvene for the budget. Come on.
November 4th, but after the budget. after so we can get into the weeds.
Yes.
Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Brian.
Full Comment is a post-media podcast. My name's Brian Lilly, your host. This episode was produced by Andre Prue. Theme music by Bryce Hall. Kevin Libin is the executive producer. Please remember to hit subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Help us out by writing a review, emailing your Aunt May in Whitby, and tell her to listen to the episode. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Brian Lilly.
Here's that clip from Canada Did What? I promised you. 2 years later, he was still opposition leader, and he lost again to the Pearson Liberals. Despite this, Diefenbaker doesn't resign as leader of the Progressive Conservatives, which put the party in an awkward situation that hasn't really happened before. The typical rules of a Canadian political party were that you stayed leader until you died or resigned. And if you lost twice in a row, you were supposed to do the honorable thing and step aside. But Diefenbaker just didn't, prompting the party to take the unprecedented step of forcing a party convention in Toronto for the singular purpose of crowbarring Diefenbaker out of the leadership. Diefenbaker shows up, pretends everything is fine, and gives a finger-wagging speech chastising his fellow party members for their disloyalty.
I followed this party when I didn't agree with policies. I gave loyalty to leader after leader, because I believe that there is no other way.
He's politely cheered by the assembled Conservatives and then abjectly humiliated in their subsequent leadership vote. On the first ballot, Diefenbaker gets a distant 5th place, and even then he refuses to admit defeat. If you want to hear the rest of the story, make sure you subscribe to Canada Did What everywhere you get your podcasts.